Saquon Barkley is having the best year of his career, and of course, he's doing it on the Philadelphia Eagles. You see, when the Eagles signed Saquon back in March, it was clear that this was going to be a perfect fit for both sides. Not only was it going to benefit Saquon Barkley and revive his career after a terrible Giants offensive line and Daniel Jones held him back for years, but it was also going to give a spark to an Eagles offense that fell apart on them last season. I mean, losing 5 out of your last 6 games in the regular season, along with getting upset in the wildcard round, is a tough way to end your year. But if there's one way to come back from this, it's by signing the best running back in the NFL. And that's exactly what GM Howie Roseman went out and did. There's a reason he's a 2-time NFL Executive of the Year, because of moves like this. Any organization would be thankful to have a guy like Howie Roseman calling the shots, especially a New York Giants team who felt it was more beneficial to pay Daniel Jones $40 million a year to throw more interceptions than touchdowns than to give Saquon what he was asking for. And you might be wondering, well, what was this ludicrous, insane amount of money that Saquon was fighting for? Well, in the end, it only took a 3-year deal worth $37.75 million, with $26 million being guaranteed. That's it. That's all it would have taken the Giants to keep Saquon. And if you paid attention to the offseason, you would know that Saquon Barkley wanted more than anything to be a New York Giant for the rest of his career. So it's not like he wanted to leave New York. In fact, there were a couple of guys in the Giants organization who came out and said that they would have loved to keep Saquon. One being their head coach, Brian Daboll, who saw the value that Saquon brought to the team. Another being owner John Mara. And while you think he may own the New York Giants and have a lot of say in this, in the end, the decision came down to GM Joe Schoen. And Joe Schoen just didn't see the importance of Saquon Barkley. And if he did, he didn't feel like it was worth $12.5 million a year, which is outrageous, by the way, because it was never going to be the type of deal that resets the running back market. In fact, Jonathan Taylor had already done that a year prior when he held out at the beginning of last season with the Indianapolis Colts. And what I find very interesting is that Saquon's new deal falls in the range of an Alvin Kamara and Josh Jacobs, who also received new contracts in the offseason. And Saquon was never asking for a groundbreaking deal like the one that Christian McCaffrey got. He was always in it for the guaranteed money. And we'll talk more about Saquon this season in a second, but for right now, I just wanted to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers, so every subscription is greatly appreciated. Alright, now let's get back to talking about Saquon Barkley and this amazing year he's having for the Philadelphia Eagles. Saquon Barkley is on pace to break just about every PR he's ever set in the NFL. I'm talking rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, rushing yards per attempt, rushing yards per game, receiving touchdowns, and total scrimmage yards. Barring any major injury, Saquon Barkley is going to have a Hall of Fame season. When his career is all said and done, this will be the year we look back on and remember Saquon Barkley the most for. It'll be up there with his generational rookie season, one I'm sure we can all remember fondly. I mean, there's a reason he won Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2018. It's because he had 11 touchdowns, 1,307 rushing yards, and 700 receiving yards, all in 16 games. And he was a Pro Bowler for New York that year. He gave the city of New York hope that one day they would be a great team. And now he's doing the same for the fans in Philadelphia. That is what I call a generational running back. And you might think I'm being a bit overdramatic or getting carried away here, but the numbers speak for themselves. Saquon Barkley is averaging 5.8 yards per attempt. What that means is if you give Saquon Barkley the ball 2 times in a row, not only will he go out and get you a first down, but he'll get you a little extra too. Saquon Barkley has been unstoppable this season, and that's probably why he's less than 200 yards away from breaking the most rushing yards he's ever had in a single season. And he'll most likely break the record against a very mid-LA Rams team. I mean, if Saquon Barkley's unstoppable, then that Rams defense is the exact opposite. And we haven't even gotten to Saquon Barkley's rushing touchdowns. He only has 8 rushing touchdowns on the year, and it should be far more. But the thing about the Philadelphia Eagles is when they get into the red zone, they like to do their little QB sneak with Jalen Hurts, and that kind of steals away from Saquon Barkley's rushing touchdowns. But Saquon Barkley has come out and said multiple times that it doesn't really bother him and that it's nothing more than a little joke between him and his QB, Jalen Hurts. He now has a better understanding of what it takes to play winning football. And if that means sacrificing some touchdowns to his quarterback or to a backup running back because the probability of scoring is higher, then he is willing to do that. I mean, he was on the New York Giants for years, where he was the only good player on his offense, and he would do everything in his power to will his team to victory week after week after week, and it just seemed like nothing would ever work. But now that he's on the Philadelphia Eagles, he's willing to take a bit of a step back scoring-wise, if that means his team has a higher likelihood of winning games. And apparently, whatever the Eagles are doing is working this season. If I were an Eagles fan, I would stay away from mainstream media because they've done nothing but shit on the Eagles all season, especially their head coach Nick Sirianni, and yet here the Eagles are more than halfway into the season, and what's their record? 8-2. Not only are they at the top of their tough division, but they're also nearing the top of the NFC and will most likely have a bye come playoff time. So if you're an Eagles fan, just trust the process here, because whatever Saquon Barkley and that offense are doing has been working to perfection. There are several games this season where the only reason the Eagles won was because Saquon Barkley was their running back. Take week 1, for example, where the Eagles start off a bit slow against the Packers. They're down 6-0, and what do? They decide to throw an 18-yard dot to Saquon Barkley for a touchdown. Now they're up. And then the very next Eagles drive, they find themselves in a hole again. This time, they decide to go on the ground, and Saquon Barkley rushes for an 11-yard touchdown. Now he has 2 touchdowns in back-to-back drives, and it doesn't end there for Saquon, because he ended the night with 100+ rushing yards, so of course he's got to get one more rushing touchdown, and halfway through the third quarter, that last rushing touchdown comes to give the Eagles a lead they would hold on to, and that's why they ended up winning 34-29, because Saquon Barkley was their guy. And only 2 weeks later, the Eagles would find themselves in another tough game against the New Orleans Saints. One team who we'd know later on would be very bad, but at the time, the Saints looked unstoppable. And in this game, well, Jalen Hurts was dog shit, but Saquon Barkley was amazing. He had 2 touchdowns and 147 rushing yards. In fact, the only scores that came from the Eagles was off of Saquon Barkley's back. He rushed for a 65-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. And then to seal the win, Saquon Barkley had another rushing touchdown, which is a huge reason as to why the Eagles beat the Saints. Hell, we could look at their most recent game against the Commanders. Absolute shit show. The game was completely boring in the first half. But then, what does Saquon Barkley do? Take over for the Eagles. And after Jalen Hurts robbed Saquon Barkley of a rushing touchdown at the beginning of the fourth quarter, he would go out and prove to the rest of the NFL why he is the best running back. Because with only 4 minutes remaining in the game and a 2-point lead, Saquon breaks out for a 23-yard rushing touchdown. And then only 20 seconds of game time later, he breaks out for a 39-yard rushing touchdown. 2 back-to-back rushing touchdowns that are enough for the Eagles to seal a very important win against a divisional opponent in the Washington Commanders. This win may have sealed the Eagles' chances at winning their division. 3 games. I've just listed 3 games for you that Saquon Barkley single-handedly won for the Philadelphia Eagles. If he isn't the biggest signing of the offseason, I don't know who is. But anyway, that's about it for this video. Really just wanted to cover Saquon Barkley's breakout season, and I think we were able to do that here. So I'll catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces.